Alright, so in this Helldivers 2 video, we're going to be going over what it's like to have a max level Dominator within the game. The Dominator has been one of my favorite weapons in the game for quite a while. Yes, it has its issues, but overall it just felt good, it sounds good, it has medium pen, it hits hard, and it just in general, I love the weapon. It's a really cool weapon, but again, the weaknesses are pretty glaring. The ergonomics suck, and overall feels like a tank when you're trying to switch targets, and in general, if you're not used to a slower bullet velocity, it's hard to track your enemies. Pair that with the poor ergonomics, and it does lead to some target acquisition issues. So basically, we're going to be going over all the attachments available, the best combinations, and how it performs against the various factions. And lastly, I'm going to answer the question, should you waste your time leveling this weapon up or not? Anyways, let's talk about it. To give you a baseline idea of how the weapon feels in-game prior to adding any attachments to it, so essentially we're going to be following that circle around, so see how long it takes to come back to center. It's quite a while. Same thing when you're looking aiming down sight. Very sluggish overall. You're going to have a hard time tracking targets around, which is one of the main issues. As for the recoil, you can see that the recoil is going to go straight up when we are aiming in third person. And then here's the recoil when we are aiming down sight. So we would love to be able to fix the ergonomics and the recoil essentially with this weapon more than anything. So going over the base stat line for the Dominator prior to weapon customization, the damage is 275, the capacity is 15, the fire rate is 250, the horizontal recoil is 40, the vertical recoil is 75, the ergonomics are 25, the backup magazines are 6, and the reload time is 4 seconds. So for the Dominator, we only have 2 categories of attachments available. We have optics and underbarrels. Going over the optics first, these basically can change ergonomics depending on which one you choose. If you choose one of the red dots, the holographics, or the tube dot, it's not going to change the stats at all. However, if you choose the iron sights, it's going to increase your ergonomics by 5. And then if you choose the 4X combat scope, it's going to decrease your ergonomics by 6. Next up for the underbarrels, basically these are going to affect overall recoil, ergonomics, and bullet spread. So the laser with flashlight is going to be the default option. No underbarrel actually increases your ergonomics by 5. The vertical foregrip actually decreases your vertical recoil by 25. The angled foregrip increases your vertical recoil by 29 and increases your ergonomics by 10. The flashlight vertical foregrip does the same exact thing as the regular vertical foregrip, except it decreases your ergonomics by 2. And lastly, the laser side angle foregrip does the same exact thing as the regular angled foregrip, except it only increases your ergonomics by 8 instead of 10. Now that we understand how all the attachments work and how they're going to impact the weapon in different ways, we're going to actually take a look at which ones are actually going to work the best. On paper, it does look like we're pretty limited here because we only got 2 categories, but seriously, these actually make a very dramatic difference in how the weapon overall performs. Just as a reminder, the key things that we're looking to fix with the Dominator overall is first and foremost the ergonomics. We got to improve that. And then if we can, let's improve that recoil some because it would be nice to get that spread a little bit tighter. So on screen right now, you're going to see the first build, which is going to be the max ergonomic build. So basically, we're going to be running the iron sights for max ergonomics there. And then we're also going to be running as our underbarrel the angled foregrip. So in total, we're going to be increasing our ergonomics to 40, and we're also going to be increasing our vertical recoil to 104, which is a downside, but overall the weapon is definitely much more snappier, as you can see on screen. So this next build is going to be slightly increasing our ergonomics, but it's going to be maximizing that vertical recoil control. So for the optics, we're going to be using the iron sights again. It's going to give us a slight boost to ergonomics. For our underbarrel, we're going to be using the vertical foregrip, which is going to maximize our vertical recoil control. So the final stats for this is going to be 30 for the ergonomics and 50 for the vertical recoil. This is going to be an interesting combination because yes, our target acquisition is a little slower side to side or up or down because of the lower ergo. However, the vertical recoil is much more tight, so that way we can actually hit our targets with more bullets, which is very good overall. So while the Dominator is much improved with these various weapon attachments, I still feel like we need a little bit more to make this weapon even better overall. So if we run the Siege Ready Armor passive, this is going to increase our reload speed and also give us more backup magazines. Why this is important is if we are in more close range firefights, having that faster reload speed is going to be huge. And because this thing has so much limited ammo, having that extra, those extra backup magazines are going to be huge. So Siege Ready is all around just a very good passive if you are going to be using the Dominator quite a bit. And then if you wanted to, you can run the Engineering or the Fortified Armor passive. Both of these reduce your recoil while standing, crouched, or prone by 30%. So that's also going to be a good one as well if you want to run this high ergo version and still get a good amount of recoil control back. Or you can actually run the old reliable peak physique perk to be able to increase the ergonomics even further. So if you didn't realize how peak physique worked, essentially it increases weapon handling. Now, what that means in English is essentially it's going to increase our ergonomics. So how many points of ergonomics do we get from peak physique? We get 30 points of ergonomics. Now with the base Dominator, it felt fine. We went from 25 ergonomics to 55. That was perfectly fine. It felt nice, but it was still quite sluggish overall. Now, if we apply that 30 points to our two build options, if we apply that to the max ergonomic build, we go from 40 to 70 ergonomics. And then if we apply that to our max vertical build, this actually goes from 30 to 60. So now we have a much improved Dominator from the standpoint of like it's much snappier on the targets if you go for that max ergo build, and it's even still very snappy if you go for that max vertical build. However, you kind of get the best of both worlds because you are still getting an increase to your ergonomics when compared to the base one. However, you are still tightening up the spread of the bullets if you are using the max vertical. This makes the Dominator much more interesting when you throw on the peak physique perk back onto here to improve those ergonomics. All of that leads nicely into the next section, which we're going to be talking about how the Dominator fares against the factions now with its juiced up version with all of its weapon attachments. And we're going to be talking about this through the lens of using the peak physique armor passive, and that's what you're going to see in the footage, because I feel like that's how you truly maximize the potential of the Dominator at this point, with peak physique on top of the weapon attachments. Now, you don't have to run peak physique, obviously. I think it feels fine with the max ergo version of it, especially without peak physique. So if you want to run something else, you can. So I guess the bugs, the Dominator was not my favorite prior to weapon customization, but now that we have weapon customization, it's actually a very solid option overall, because the biggest thing with the bugs was that they move very fast side to side. You had to switch targets quite frequently, and the fact that we can actually do that much more fluidly with the various weapon attachments on here now paired with peak physique, it feels very, very nice to overall target switch with the Dominator now. So you're able to kill the unarmored and light armored units like the warriors, hunters, and everything in between in 1 to 2 shots, which is very powerful. Some of the beefier units like the stalkers and the brood commanders will take about 3 to 4 shots depending on which one you're shooting at. And then because of the medium pen, we can actually damage the spewer enemies to the face, which is going to kill them very quickly. The Dominator can also help you with objective clearing, meaning if you're wanting to shoot those spore towers or the shrieker nest to be able to take them out, you can use the Dominator to damage those very easily. And then lastly, similar to the Scorcher, the Dominator is going to be able to do some really good damage against that charger butt area. Not quite as powerful, but it's going to be able to do some really good work if you want to shoot him there. I will say though that even with all the improvements with weapon customization for the Dominator, it's still not quite a top tier option versus the bugs. While it's much improved, the limited ammo is still an issue, meaning that you're having to reload frequently, and having to reload a lot with the bugs is quite cumbersome, especially when you're getting swarmed. But then you can also build around it to help offset that some, but again, because you're needing to run things to be able to offset some of those ammo constraint issues, it kind of becomes a bit of a hindrance to run this versus the bugs. But overall, it's much better, much improved if you build around it the right way. Against the Illuminate, it's a very similar story because the increase to ergo means that you're going to be able to target swap very easily on the Illuminate, and the main issues were against those flying overseers. The flying overseers would cause a lot of problems. It'd be hard to hit them or track them in the sky, so now you can actually do that very easily with this higher ergo version of the Dominator, which is very nice. Outside of that, in terms of overall performance of the Dominator, it's going to be able to one-shot the Voltless. It's going to kill the flesh mobs in about a magazine and a half. The Overseers are going to die in about 3 to 4 shots to the body and about 2 shots to the face. And because it has medium pen, you're going to be able to take out those Stingrays. You're going to be able to take out those Harvesters if you shoot the joint area. And speaking on the Stingrays again, because of the higher ergo, we can actually track our shots better when we're actually shooting at the Stingrays in the sky. And overall, with all the improvements, I do feel like the Dominator is much improved against the Illuminus more than any faction in the game right now, and I feel like it's actually a solid option. If you build around it the right way, you put the right tools around it, the Dominator is going to be a really, really powerful weapon depending on how you use it and depending on, again, what you put around it. So against the boss, the Dominator has always been a top tier choice, and a lot of people have always put that as one of their favorite weapons to use against the boss because it was just so good at taking him out very quickly. And it's even better with the ergonomic improvements and the fact that we can actually tighten up that vertical recoil with the max vertical version. Seriously, this is an amazing tool right now versus the bots. You're gonna be able to hit those faces much easier against the berserkers, the devastators, and even the troopers or whatever. It's gonna kill them way faster just because you can actually hit those weak spots much easier. It's gonna be able to make quick work of the strider enemies. It's gonna make easier work of the gun chips because you can actually track them better because of the better ergonomics. Overall, this is a much improved weapon versus the bots because you can actually track enemies better. You can hit those weak spots a lot better if you go for that max vertical recoil control one. I absolutely love the freaking Dominator right now versus the bots. It's one of my favorite weapons to use in the game versus them. All right, so with all that out of the way, the biggest question we need to ask ourselves is the Dominator good with all the weapons customization options, and is it worth you going out and leveling it right now? So I would say yes. I honestly do think the Dominator is much improved with its overall ergonomic increases and the vertical recoil control now if you go for that maximum vertical version. Now, the bigger overall arching thought is this though. If you liked the Dominator before, you're gonna love it now. It is so much better in terms of its overall target acquisition and its control. If you did not like the Dominator before, you're still gonna have the same issues of the fact that it has a lower magazine, the fact that the projectiles are slower, the fact that the hit registration is a bit off sometimes. If you don't like the Dominator for those reasons, it's not gonna be that much of a change for you. However, I would say if you're looking for something to level up, if you've leveled up all the weapons you want, give this a shot because this ergonomic increase and also the vertical recoil control makes it a much more viable weapon from the standpoint that you can track targets much better. If you tack on peak physique with that, it is a seriously good weapon. When you put that against the bots, it's very, very powerful against them now. It's one of the top tier weapons in my opinion. Against the Illuminate, it is much improved. And even against the bugs, it's actually kind of fun to use and something different because it's actually gonna kill the bugs very quickly if you have other things built around the weapon. Yes, it's not a top priority for you to level up, but if you were on the fence about the Dominator before because of its overall sluggishness, give this a shot. Try the max ergonomic version to see how it feels with max ergonomics with peak physique, and then also try the one with the better vertical recoil control. I actually personally enjoyed that one better because my shots were hitting right on target where I wanted them to hit, which was absolutely fantastic. And it felt good side to side target acquisition control because I was able to lock onto my targets much faster with peak physique on. Overall, yeah, the Dominator, it was good before, but it's actually even better now in my opinion. So this is definitely worth leveling up at some point in your journey. But anyways, that's everything you need to know about having a maxed out Dominator within Helldivers 2. So let me know what you guys think about this video down in the comments below. Let me know what weapons you're leveling up. More importantly, like and subscribe for more content similar to this. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.